This Pivotal Advisors video will be about creating your sales process. During the next few minutes, we're going to talk about why you even need to have a sales process. We'll also talk about steps in creating the process that works for you. We'll also talk a little bit about sales tools, how you roll it out to your team, and finally, how do you reinforce a process once you've created it. To answer the question of why you need a sales process, it's helpful to look at the stages that sales forces or sales organizations go through in their evolution. This bell curve shows that companies move from courtship, infant, go-go, adolescent, all the way through aristocracy and finally to death if they don't take care in what they do. Let's start by looking at the first segment. When companies first start, they're known to be in the courtship or infant stages. This is when sales reps just go do whatever they can to go find business. There's really not established processes. There's no real ideal clients. There's not really sales tools. Sales reps will just make up what they need to do to go find business. They'll create their own messaging, and that's okay. That's how a lot of companies get started, and that's how sales efforts begin. However, at some point when they want to move to this go-go adolescent phase, this is when we start seeing a little bit more sales process, a little bit more structure, and the reason is simple. We want something that's repeatable. We don't want everybody doing their own thing because we're not all leveraging best practices. We want to get everybody on the same page, doing it the same way, which makes life easier and allows companies to scale in a faster manner. Once companies get really good at this, they know how to scale, people drop into the organization, everybody does best practices. This is when you start getting very profitable. Scale becomes much easier, and other companies even want to partner with you. This is the best that companies operate. The right side of the curve is a little dangerous. This is what companies do if they get too protective of where they are. They stop innovating. They start getting aristocracy. We start having legal and finance and operations control what's going on. We stop taking risk. We stop coming up with new ideas. We're not going to talk a lot about this side of the curve. The reason we are talking about this curve at all is where you see the red line. Companies get to a certain stage and they flatten out. They plateau. Could be at $1 million, could be at $5 million. We've seen a lot of companies get as high as $50 million, but at some point what they're doing is not repeatable. It's not scalable. I can't teach the next level of people how to do that. I certainly can't take somebody off of the street and teach them how to do it the way that we do it, and that's when they level off and they can't scale anymore. This is what we're trying to avoid. Research by a company called CSO Insights breaks sales organizations into 4 different levels. Level 1 being the most basic. Again, it's kind of in those infant and courtship years. That's where there is no single way of selling. There's no sales process. Everybody does things their own way. That's just how things get done. Level 2 organizations are a little different. It's an informal sales process. We like to call it tribal wisdom. We've all kind of learned from each other. We all kind of do it the same way, yet it's still not formalized. It's really probably not written down. It's not trained to. We almost learn through osmosis, but everybody kind of does things in the same manner. Level 3 is a little bit more formal now. It probably is written down. It's absolutely trained to. It's measured. We have adopted it throughout the organization. One of the fallbacks on level 3 organizations is one of our main measurements is still just the result. It's dollars, it's units, it's gross profit, but those are all what we call lagging indicators. They don't give us much insight into where we're at until the game is already over. And finally, there's level 4 organizations. Those are the ones that are living and breathing process. Everybody knows it. We have feedback systems to say if we're following it or not. We look at it every year to modify it if there's new best practices that we want to incorporate. We look at leading indicators. We actually use the leading indicators to see how people are progressing from step to step, but we live and breathe process. If you look at how organizations break out, you're going to see that 62% of them fall into that level 1 and 2. Not a whole lot of process at all. If it is, it's all tribal wisdom. Very few make it to level 4. So who cares? Why does this make a difference at all? Well, the same study will show you there's a lot of reasons why we should care. When you compare level 4 companies with all other companies combined, you're going to see that they are much more accurate in how they target. They're much better at differentiating, which probably means that they win more deals. They're better at cross-selling and upselling services or products across customers. They're better at introducing new products, and they keep more dollars in the deal. All of these things, of course, add up to a lot bigger money. It is important to note that companies can't just move from level 1 to level 4. They almost have to progress level 1, 2, 3, 4 and evolve. They start to define these systems, and they start to adopt it, then they start to measure it, then they start to make refinements to it, then they start to train to it. It's not a big jump that you can make right away, but the companies that do make that progression through the different levels are the ones that outperform their peers. Other benefits that these companies realize when they do standardize on sales process is probably the biggest one. Everybody speaks the same language. Everybody knows what it means to be in the qualified state or in the negotiation state or something along those lines. We don't leave it to chance or up to the rep's opinion as to what certain things mean. We have a common language. Another big one is decreased ramp-up time for new reps. Without a sales process, many times a new rep just has to learn on their own. They might spend time in various different departments, and maybe they shadow some reps, but I might shadow one rep and pick up a few things from that person. I might shadow a different rep and pick up different things, and now I'm going to make a conglomeration of that and make my own way. And now there's 3 different ways to go to market, and that it becomes much harder to be scalable. If I just follow the proven best practices, the ones that everybody uses, I can see that everybody's using them. I fall right in line with what they're doing. I get to speed very quickly. From a sales leader standpoint, it makes it much easier to coach and develop if I know how you're supposed to be doing things. I don't have to learn how you do that and then give you coaching recommendations. You just follow the process that we know works. I can provide feedback, I can provide coaching, and it makes development much quicker for those people. And if everybody's using all the best practices, again, the big benefit there is that we get higher close rates and usually higher dollar deals because we're keeping our value in those deals. So let's look at creating your sales process. We like to start with what are the stages or steps that a buyer will go through to acquire your products or services. Give them each a name, and then for each one of those stages or steps, we're going to have a goal for what we want done in that particular step or stage. The goal on the first call is probably not to sell them something unless you're a very transactional organization, but it might be to qualify them. The next stage might be to do what we call discovery or learn more about them. Some people call it needs analysis. What is the goal for each step? Next, we like to look at the activities that happen within each step. It might be meetings, it might be phone calls, there might be information we need to gather, it might be showing them products, but what are the specific things that the rep does in that stage to advance them to the next stage? The next thing to notate in your sales process might be what tools are available to them. It might be sell sheets, it might be credit apps, it might be PowerPoints or presentations, it might be the web, but what is available to them to use during that particular stage? And then finally, we don't like to move out of a stage until we get some type of a customer commitment. We call them toll gates, but what has the customer either agreed to or given us that shows that they're still in the game at this point, and I'm not going to be moving out of that step until I've got that customer commitment. So here's an example of a completed sales process. You see the steps or the stages across the top, qualified, discovery, etc. You see a goal for each step. You see particular activities that you do in each step. There are tools that are available. Doesn't have to be a tool in every step, but in this case there is. And you can see I'm not moving out of that step until I have a customer commitment. In the box you'll find a blank template, which is useful to help you start documenting what your particular sales process is. So now that you understand what a good sales process looks like, let's talk about how you go about developing your own. We like to start by involving your best people. There's probably people on your team that are selling real well. They might be aware, or maybe they're even unaware of all the good things that they do when they are selling, but we want to capture their best practices and document them to be part of the sales process. So take your top people, bring them together, and use them to help you create this. Go through each of the components as a team, and let's talk about them. Again, all the things that we just talked about, the stages, goals, activities, tools, etc. Let them do the talking. You're asking questions. You're asking how do they get in the door? How do they target people? Who are they targeting when they're in there? Have they created any tools that are useful? And they are providing all the information. You're gathering data. You're suggesting. You're asking questions. If they do have tools out there, we find it all the time that one rep may have created some widget or tool or presentation that the other ones aren't even aware of. Take them, document them, let's formalize them so everybody else can use the same ones. You have a lot of options for when you're holding these meetings. One option is just to create from scratch. You have the blank template. Let's just start from scratch and see if people can fill it in. A lot of people have a hard time doing that. They can't articulate all the things that they do. So the second option would be provide them with something like a sample that we just showed you or something that's in the box, and let them react and say, this isn't ours, but let's change it to make it more like it's ours. Are these the stages we have, or do we want to name them something differently? Are these the types of activities that we do, or are there different things that we do? And some people are better off just reacting and modifying than they are if they have to try to come up with it on their own. Again, capture their ideas. Don't give them the answer. If we want to promote buy-in, we want to get everybody to be doing these things. We can't just dictate what it is. Let's bring them along for the ride. Actually, let's have them dictate what their process has been. They've been successful for a reason. Suggest. When they do get stuck, suggest here's what others have done. Sometimes they might ask these types of questions, or they might go after these types of stakeholders. How do you guys feel about that? Is that the same thing that we do? But get their brain going again. As we said before, let them do most of the talking. We're capturing ideas, we're suggesting, but they're doing most of the talking. And of course, we're always encouraging and trying to make progress within developing this process. When we've had all our meetings and we've finished our sales process, we've developed all the tools that we need or captured them or formalized them, now we're ready to take our work and present it to the larger team. Typically, we see this done in an hour and a half, 2-hour meeting. Always like to start with why are we even doing this? Some of the slides that we talked about earlier talk about what we're trying to get done by having a sales process. And then it's step by step, walking through what each step in the process means. What are the activities we're looking for? Here's the tools that we want you to be using. And it's probably best if we use the people that helped us develop this process to let them present it to them. Let them come up with stories, why they do that, how they use the particular things. You're going to get a lot more buy-in if it's the team presenting to the team rather than having just the leader present to the team. And probably one of the most important parts is once we've rolled this out, we want it to be a lot more than just a good discussion. We want to set some expectations for how we want to see it used. We're going to set expectations about we're going to go out on rides with them. We're going to look for different information in these particular deals. We're going to look for different things on their pipeline or in their forecast or in the CRM. But let's set clear expectations about how we want them to adopt this process and how we want them to use it. We have found that tools can be one of the best ways to reinforce what the process is. For example, we've got several different options shown on the screen right now, but if we want them to do discovery or needs analysis in a particular way, we want them to gather specific information or document different things, we give them a tool to do that. We might want to have them start by doing account planning sheets to make sure that we're identifying all the right stakeholders, that we're identifying who the competition is, that we have a strategy for how we're going to win the account. Give them the tool. If they have to fill out the boxes in the tool or have to fill out information in the tool, it just reinforces these are the things that we need to get done. Same type of thing with checklists. You go on a call, we want to make sure that we do these 5 things on every call. Make it a checklist. They come out of the call, the sales manager and the rep can go through the checklist to make sure that we did all the things that we're supposed to be doing. All great examples for how we standardize, how we reinforce, and everybody's using the tools that we know are the best tools out there. And finally, after it's rolled out, it will quickly fade away if we don't reinforce it, and that becomes the job of the sales leader. There's so many ways that you can reinforce it. Probably most powerful is observation and feedback. You're going out on calls with them, or you're listening in on calls. If you have an inside sales organization, you're seeing if they're following the process. You're providing them feedback and encouragement when they do. You're providing suggestions for them, and we do this on a continual basis until we see that they have it and they've adopted it and they're using it. Also in one-on-ones, we sit down when we analyze an account. We see if they're following the steps in the process. We reward them or recognize them when they are. We provide ideas and recommendations when they're not. We can be looking at CRM data. We can be looking at account planning sheets, as we just mentioned. We can give them recognition in meetings for how well they've done it, or even have them explain how the process has helped them or what they've done within accounts. We can get the CEO or other executives within the company recognizing that they've done the things that we want. But reinforcement is the biggest thing. It's great to have a sales process, but the only way you're going to get people to follow it is by this ongoing reinforcement. So these were the steps for why we need a process, what are the components of it, and how do we develop it and roll it out to the team. Next, you can work with your Pivotal Advisors consultant to help you develop this for your particular purpose. In this folder in the library, you should find samples of what other sales processes look like, blank templates, and examples of different tools that you can use within your own process or things that you can modify for your own. Thank you for watching. Please give us a call if you have any questions.